If you're going to look back in your life, would you have rather have tried and failed or wondered what if? And, I just feel like so many people, they don't live up to their full potential because they live out of fear, a fear of what could go wrong. And, another podcast that I listened to a lot was by Tim Ferriss. He wrote the book, The 4 Hour Work Week. And I remember this was a big thing. The example he would in there is like, okay, what's the thing we fear most? You map it out. And if it actually happens, you go bankrupt, you lose all your money, you lose your house, and you have to go back and get a job. I mean, yeah, that would suck, but is it going to destroy your life? And how often do we just focus on what could go wrong instead of what could go right? And I just think that that's probably been one of the biggest things. It's like a workout. You go in, those workouts that make you feel you're going to throw up and you're so sore you can't hardly move for a week. It's the kind of same thing in life. What are you doing that makes you mentally feel like you're going to throw up? Because, the more you do it, the stronger you get, the better you get at it. And that very thing that made you feel like you're going to throw up a few years ago, you won't even think about it anymore.
Welcome to the Fitness CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs launch and grow successful gyms. Here's your host, Bryce Henson.
Hey friends, welcome back to another amazing episode, and here with my two friends, Ben and Amber. Before I introduce them today, I want to give you a friendly reminder to give us a like and subscribe on YouTube and write us an awesome review on iTunes. That way we can keep producing this content for you for free. So with that all said, Amber and Ben, welcome to the show.
All right, thanks for having us, buddy.
Thank you.
Super excited to have you. We're here in Nashville, about to kick off our mastermind, and you've been both like long-time standing owners. So my first question to kick off the podcast is, tell us the backstory. Really, how did you get involved in fitness? And I guess when did you launch your Fit Body, and how did it all come to be?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was actually as being an overweight kid. And I remember, I think it's probably about second grade, I gained all this weight. And, I was drinking like 3 sodas a day and come home after school and ate a bag of Doritos. And, and it was like all this stuff, didn't know anything about nutrition, healthy living, exercise, or anything like that. And it was finally like, I think it was at my 8th grade summer, just, got to this point. I didn't want to be like this anymore. And that's kind of what kickstarted of trying to understand what is, being healthy, how to lose weight. And I didn't necessarily do it the healthy way. It was kind of a mild starvation diet. My 8th grade summer, went out and ran 3 miles every night and lost like 30 pounds. But that's what kind of kickstarted it, and, got into just learning about fitness, nutrition all through high school. And right after high school, got my personal training certification through NASM back when it was still on VHS tapes.
Nice.
And, and then a few weeks after getting that, went to basic training for the Army. And that's really what kind of kickstarted my passion for it. And as far as like getting into Fit Body, I mean, that's I think kind of a long story, but just kind of the short version is, went to school after the Army and was deployed overseas, served in Iraq, and came back and I was on the reserves and going to school for nutrition. So I wanted to be a dietitian.
By the way, thank you for your service. Really appreciate that. Yes.
Appreciate it. And, so went through that. I was a trainer all through college at a big box gym and graduated, got into medical sales. And during this whole time, I thought this would be, at some point I wanted to have my own business. I'd been following Bedros through college and had this idea at some point, hey, I wanted to have some sort of a business. Even had this idea of having like this outdoor boot camp. And this was in, 2011, 2010, 2011 is when I graduated. And then got laid off from this medical sales company and just thought, what, I'm not going to be in this situation again. They kind of made all these promises. Hey, we're doing this huge expansion. And I thought, all right, great. There's going to be this amazing opportunity. And then I think just at about a year of being on with the company, they laid off my division and said, it's time for you to, find something else. And I thought, I'm not going to be in this situation again. And that was when I bought Bedros's PT business course and just started up with 4 people in my garage. And, it was in June of 2014, opened up the first location. We hadn't met at this point. And it kind of just, it went from there. And, so.
And went from there, it did. And for our audience, Ben and Amber are one of our most successful owners in our whole brand, 8 locations in Arizona. So just, a lot of respect and admiration there. So thanks for kind of teeing that up. I want to transition to Amber. And even though at this period of time, you guys didn't connect, certainly, and you have another career outside of Fit Body. But of course, like being a husband and wife duo, we know there's a lot of like back end collaboration working together. So just, curious, like on, your fitness journey and how did that, come to be, especially, when linking up with Ben?
Yeah, so I was an athlete my entire life, so played softball starting at a very young age, volleyball. My parents were athletics, so it was we were indoctrinated at a very young age. And for me, fitness didn't become an issue for me until after having kids. I was married before Ben and I met. And I would say once, I hit my 30s, I could no longer rely on the good genes and the prior, time as an athlete to keep me fit and healthy and thin. And so I found a personal trainer. I was paying about $500 a month, $40 a session, and fortunately or unfortunately, I guess, she moved away. And so I was at a point where I needed to do something different. I tried to go to a gym on my own, and I tried to see if I could, take what she taught me and do it, and I wasn't really motivated and came up with 100 excuses why I shouldn't go. And then I bought a Groupon to join Fit Body. Little did you know, Groupon was a matchmaking service because that's how we met. Part of the story. And I met Ben right before he opened his 3rd location.
As basically a trial client checking out one of the gyms.
Yes.
Well, there's the other side of that.
Oh,
though.
the plot thickens, my friends. I don't know if I've known the granular details of this. So, audience, I'm getting the download too. This is awesome.
Yeah, we had just started implementing a new payroll system, which, that's what she does for a living. And, that as with everything, she said, hey, if you needed any tips or help with as you're going through this process. And so, one thing just kind of led to another. And then now here we are. So it was one of those things.
What year was this roughly?
2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, right before location number 3 opened.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, so some good times.
That's awesome. All right, so kind of transitioning now, right around this time, even a little bit before, obviously fitness had touched you, it touched you in a different way. What were your initial goals in launching, I guess, your 1 location? And again, Ben and Amber have 8 locations in Greater Phoenix. So if you can kind of remember back, what was the big ambition or reason and really expectation of really launching the business, and what were your goals?
It comes back to what I was saying before. I had this dream of having my own business one day, even of having my own gym. And I think it just started off with that. And then as it got going, got the first location up and going, I just thought, it was like, okay, I want to keep making an impact. I always had this thought, I want to do something in life that when I'm looking back, that made a difference, that had an impact. And that's just really where I saw that we had success with the first location and got it to a point where, okay, it's time to start expanding and start, really like how could we take over the state of Arizona? And, while we haven't quite done that, I feel like we made a pretty good impact up to this point.
Definitely a big dent for sure.
And, what I just see it is like, because there's so many people that just, honestly, that need this. And, it's one of the most rewarding things that you can do. And I just think that it kind of really, for me, it ties back to that.
Yeah. Love that. Now, kind of transitioning, being that you started your journey in 2014, how have your goals evolved? Because, starting from 1 location, then having success and wanting to make this huge impact, how has your mindset and your vision changed with time? And kind of what does that look like now?
Well, this may sound crazy, but it's almost to like, I remember the first location, it was exciting. There's adrenaline rush, there's this risk. And then once we got to 6, 7, and 8, it's like, okay, you just do this, this, and this. And in some ways, it's just the same formula, And for me, it's almost thinking, okay, we've kind of got, in a lot of ways, this figured out for the most part, minus, the past couple of years with COVID and the curveball that threw. But beyond that, that you figured out, you get through it. And, it's just like, how can we start growing at a bigger level and, expanding into multiple states and, or, whatever it is. I think the biggest thing for me, we all have this glass ceiling, right? This thing that it's like, there's these goals or things that almost seem impossible. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen with going through this process is like, whether it's this or whatever, like if you set your mind to something, you can do anything that you set your mind to, right? And I think that, with that, it comes back to, I think that, yeah, we've set some of the goals for like our 10-year plan was getting to 40 locations and to be able to be in multiple states and just having a huge impact that's going to impact thousands of people's lives. So I think long term, that has been what we've been working towards, at this point.
Yeah, well, good on you both. I feel like many qualities and skill sets. One of them is big visionaries, so good on you for that. Speaking of skill sets, Ben, I want to ask you first, and then Amber, you have a different career, but very successful at that, obviously for ADP. What are the skill sets, if you look back, that any new gym owner or fit body owner needs to either have or develop? And then the second part is, what current skill sets are you looking to develop? Ben, I'll ask you first, and then from your perspective as well, Amber.
Well, I think as you're jumping into it is learning to live with no sleep. And I think having that just mindset of, and I think a lot of this came from the military, was to embrace the suck. Is that it's going to be painful at first. You're going to have to make sacrifices. But there was a saying that always stuck with me of delayed gratification. And I think it was Dave Ramsey that said this, that, and he was talking about it from like a financial perspective, but I think it applies in so many things. Do what most people are not willing to do now, and you'll live like most people will never be able to live, or essentially something of that context.
Yeah.
And, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's just realize that it's going to be a grind at first. But it's a temporary thing. It's not going to have to be for forever. And I think the other big thing too is just having a passion for people. You see a lot of fitness businesses specifically out there where it's like walking into a used car, lot, that they see you go into a big box gym and it's about converting you to a sale. And the big thing, if this is a different business, that you have to have a legitimate care and passion for helping people. And I think if you go into this with the mindset of like, my job is to serve and help people and help the clients, like it's going to be wildly successful. And I think now at this point, it's even beyond that, it's with our team. How can I serve, help, coach, and develop them? Give them the tools and resources. And really it's finding, it's hiring people that have those same values, that they have a passion for this, and not just for fitness, but a passion for helping people.
And that's what you look for.
Yep. Absolutely.
Amber, how about you? And granted, I know you're coming from a different industry, but you're a very successful businesswoman. What sort of skills, like twofold question, like looking at Ben and the growth of Fit Body, what sort of skills do you think Ben has developed and his team developed? And also, what type of skills have you developed and, currently on the path towards increasing?
Yeah, I think most importantly, resiliency, and it was really important for Ben when he first dove into the business to really learn all aspects of it. But as he continued to grow in locations, really bringing in the right people, I think your biggest struggle initially was delegating and, trusting them because, that was your baby for the longest time. But, really switching from, the doer and doing and knowing all things. So like empowering and entrusting others to do those things as well. And, he's been very fortunate to meet really passionate people along the way, maybe some not so passionate, but you live and learn, right? And sometimes you gotta kiss a few frogs before you find real talent. But he's got a really strong team in place now. We moved across the country less than a year ago, and he's got a great team on the ground in Arizona that keep things running and going. But I would say that, and then you've got a team of about 60, and so really just the leadership, and not just, part of it is, sharing, teaching, but I think the other piece is really getting people to have the same care, love, passion that he has, right? Because he can't force people to do the things like the lead follow-up and taking care of the members as they come in. But he can inspire them to do that and walk the talk. And, he's done a great job doing that.
Yeah, amen to that. And leadership, man, I mean, when I think of you both, and specifically Ben, obviously our close working relationship over the years would be the first thing I think of. And I know you credit that to your, growth, personal growth, the military, but to be able to run an organization as you both have, super impressive. And I think leadership is a huge takeaway that you both have acquired. I want to transition now a little bit into like your working relationship. And I say working, meaning that, many couples within FitBody, some work together, they just have different roles in the business. You guys have different, I guess, career paths, but let's face it, you guys are in the trenches together. And I know I work with my wife, Tatiana, in granted, we're in the same business, but we have very different functions, but there's still a lot of back-end support and alignment needs to happen. So from your perspective, Amber, what would you say, how is that working relationship? And then Ben, after that, I want to hear from you, like the big value that, you seek and really, receive from Amber support.
Yeah, my background's a little different, but I think it comes down to, leadership, like we discussed. When I'm not playing therapist, I think as he's grown, locations 4 through 8, it's really been, helping guide him around scaling, right? Because you create scale, you've got, people doing the same thing across different locations, and so how do you not have to replicate that and replicate the expense and everything else? But I would say probably just I would say FitBody is a daily discussion in our home.
Has to be.
Yeah.
It has to be even for like a one location owner, right. Let alone like multiply that by 8 with a team of 60 based in Phoenix, but now you guys are in Atlanta, Georgia. I would imagine that's just nonstop.
Yeah, but I would say for anyone that either owns a FitBody or that's looking to own a FitBody, it's really important to have a support system in place and people that are like-minded, right, that are encouraging you to grow. Because when he first started, there were probably a lot of people that thought he was crazy, and especially as he was opening more and more locations, right? Like, what are you doing? You should be fine. And
that's a sign of an amazing visionary.
Right?
If people are like, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Or a lot of times, actually, that's just a kind of internal insecurity thing that they can't do that. So they're going to ask you, like, are you sure you want to do that? But to have that vision and then follow through, I mean, it's just, game changing. Ben, from your lens, I would love to kind of hear some of the biggest value support. Obviously, Amber's extremely intelligent and awesome supporter and an incredible businesswoman in her own acumen. What are the biggest level of support system that she provides you in order to help you continue to run the business?
Yeah, I think, for me, the leadership mindset, a lot of those, it came from the military. That can be a great thing, except there's a lot of stuff we could do in the military that will get you into a lawsuit in the civilian world. And so I think that has been probably the biggest thing.
No, you can't do that. You can't say it that way.
Sound of reason.
Well, it has. It's, she being a senior leader in corporate America. And sometimes, honestly, just some of the things that have come up, it's like, we'll get these things like, so, hey, what would you do with this situation? Just some ridiculous thing that you hear from, something that happened with a client. Like a client or staff member, the most rewarding thing in this business is the people and being able to make an impact. That is also the most challenging part of it too, because it is very much a people business. And with that, you also, I think you have a lot of people's insecurities, hurts, and whatever else that comes with that. But I think that's probably been the biggest thing is like, having someone to be able to talk through, because, there's a lot of things like I can't sit here and share a lot of this stuff with the team. There's things that come up that are maybe isolated. Maybe there's another leader on the team that's doing something that's, so it's, and there's, very select few people that can actually discuss this and have a sounding board of like, what's the best strategy? What should we do? How do we handle this? And, I think at this level, that's probably more than it is anything, is just making sure we're aligned and some of these ridiculous stories that I could probably spend a whole other hour telling you about, as I'm sure you have as well.
It could be a reality show, I think.
Yeah.
People are interesting. We love them. They're interesting. That's ourselves included, right? So
absolutely. So, but yeah, that's probably the biggest thing I think is just, that she compliments, and I think a lot of ways has probably a lot more patience. Has just a more, I think, caring, nurturing side, where sometimes I think those are things that have gotten me into trouble is, again, just sometimes just going for the throat, and not that sometimes isn't the best approach. So
Kind of like your blessing and your curse, then
Yes.
the same thing, like that directness, but also too, you got to weigh that.
I do have to show the story. There was one time he was really frustrated, I think, with some of the coaches, and he's like, "We're going to go to the meeting today, and I'm going to smoke them. We're going to,
this was early on,
he was
yeah.
going to put them through this physical." And I'm like, "You can't do that. Why not?"
The voice of reason. Thank you,
was,
Amber.
yes.
The business didn't burn down from that potential crazy exchange. Love that. All right, well, I'm going to dive in. Next question. We're going to go granular at first, and then I want to kind of go big picture. And Ben, this is more for you running the day-to-day, but what would you say, kind of is some of the aspects of your day-to-day? And also, just to preface from our audience, this is going to be very different than a new owner coming in for first location, being that the size and scale that you have. But I think it's a great opportunity for our audience to learn, from an industry expert and a very successful gym owner with multiple locations, what their role could look like with growth and scale. So could you, paint us the picture of your day to day?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's probably kind of boring. It's not why you would want to go into fitness. And I mean, I'll tell you what I do now, just what it was like when I first got started. I mean, but right now it's take some phone calls, answer some emails, work on projects or tasks or things. I mean, some of the back end stuff, marketing things, marketing emails. Maybe it's, I think we're trying to get a Calendly integration for direct booking for leads. And I think there's some stuff like that. So it's more of like the technical stuff that needs to happen behind the scenes, or some of the things that I will take on at the moment.
A lot of strategy and planning.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of planning strategy. Just we have our Monday IL-10s, and then Thursday midweek check-ins with the leaders or basically a one-on-one that I have with our senior leaders. And it's just making sure that we are going through and executing on what needs to get done. We're setting a plan, and vision of where we're going, and just following through with it. And I think that's the big part of it at this point. So when I got started, though, that was a whole other thing.
And I think that's valuable too, actually. If you can kind of look back at 2014, if you can remember some of the things.
This is why he was single when I met him.
There you go.
And even now, even someone getting into the business, hopefully they would never have to do this. But I was a one-man show. I got up at 4 a.m. I coached from, what was our first workout started at 5:20 a.m. And then it was every 40 minutes up until 10 a.m. What was it? 5:20, 6, 6:40, 7:20, 8, 8:40, and then 9:20 or whatever. It was something like that. So basically coach for 5 hours, would meet with people to go over nutrition and sales consults, and some of the hours after that, do follow-up, emails, whatever, the stuff that needed to happen. Go back and coach from 4 to 8 p.m., take another nutrition consult at 8 p.m., get out of there by 9:30, go home, go to bed about 10:30, wake up at 4 a.m., do it again. And did that for about 3 months. As we started to scale, obviously I wasn't having to do as much. We started having coaches come in. I would still coach some of the sessions just because it was fun, and that's how you build that relationship with the clients. Would do the nutrition consults, then you start layering in all the other stuff that kind of goes into it. Just the leading of your team. It's some of the marketing stuff, marketing emails, or just, the different tasks that go into it. That's, I don't know, that's just been the whole thing. But as we've grown and scaled and hired people, I've been able to remove some of those things to focus on, what's the whole saying of being able to work on the business and not in it as much.
Yeah. And I think both is needed. But ultimately, as you elevate yourself, as you have done, Ben and Amber, that working on the business, that 30,000 foot view is so important. So, and I think that's really important insight to be able to provide our audience, especially who are interested in kind of taking that leap of faith with their first fitness business. And the good news is, we both started a very similar time frame. Things have changed in a very good way. There's way more structure, support, or grand openings are just super dialed in. But it doesn't mean that hard work is still not needed. It's just a little bit more efficient for our new owners coming through the pipeline. But I think this is our battle scars, which is incredible.
Yeah. Well, I remember, Bryce, it was I think you and Matt, you guys were. I remember especially you, that you were one of the early rock stars that had motivated me. I remember seeing that you just opened your third location and thought, all right, well, if you can do it, then I'm going to do it too.
And that you did times 2, my friend. So good on you. What's up, my friend? Bryce here. Now, you might know me as the co-host of this podcast and the CEO of FitBody. But what many people don't know is that I actually began my journey as a FitBody franchise owner. Now, being an owner, I wake up every day absolutely doing what I love. I live my passion. I help people transform their lives and have both financial and personal freedom. It's for these reasons and many more that other owners join the brand and open their own FitBody locations too. So if you're looking to build a highly profitable business, take charge of your life, and create an impact in your very own community, then opening a FitBody gym might be a perfect fit for you. Now, to see if a territory is available in your area, as we have very limited spots due to our incredible growth, go ahead and visit our website at fbbcfranchise.com to complete an application. Well, thanks, and back to the show. All right, my last few questions before we hit the lightning round and kind of talking about 30,000 foot view. And Amber, I want your feedback as well, you know, obviously working behind the scenes. But if you look back at your FitBody journey since 2014, and you touched on this a little bit with the people kind of analogy, but what were some of the biggest challenges that you overcame that maybe you didn't actually, you know, have insight that you're going to have to overcome? And the flip side, what has been the biggest source of fulfillment, just this whole experience? So kind of a two-part question.
I think COVID, that could be and everything that encompasses that. We're still recovering from that and trying to deal with some of the after effects, but that's just the world we live in. Beyond that, though, probably the biggest thing has just been, again, some of the people issues. Like, you hire people that, I don't know, I've just always tried to feel like I'm going to try to do right by people. And I've just seen that a lot of people, especially some of the staff, they don't operate like that. And, unfortunately, we've had to sue 3 separate trainers that they come in, we poured into them, because then we teach them, hey, this is how you develop relationships and make an amazing, side, of the business. This is how you make an impact in people's lives. And then when they start, we've had a few that wanted to be Instagram butt stars and, some of those things that just don't align with our values, right? And at some point, you got to see that this person needs to go. And I mean, there's been multiple occasions that we've had to manage someone out or fire them, and the clients don't get that, and they take several people. So unfortunately, there's been we had to sue 3 separate trainers, and I mean, it was more out of this has been the difficult side of leadership, almost like we're going to make an example out of you if you do this, and hopefully that other people, as we always tell them, we don't care if you leave, but don't go and try to
do it the right way.
Do it the right way. Yeah, and this will not happen to you. So I mean, I don't know. I think that's probably been the most challenging side of it. But the other side, the most rewarding is, again, it's just when people, and again, it's staff and the clients too, that we've also seen staff that they've been able to buy houses. We've been able to coach into them and develop them. We've even had some that I know that everyone on our team, for in a lot of ways, I don't expect them to be there for forever. But I look at it as, how can I give them the tools to equip them that when they go on to that next calling or venture, they're going to be better off. And I know that, we've had someone that she was one of our first coaches. She was, her name was Kaylin, and she started off and ran 2 facilities, and then just decided it was a time for a change in life. And she got hired in with this new company, and just she's one of their top performing employees. And she's like, everything I got from FitBody is what helped her basically to be a rock star, one of the top, performers in this this new career path that she took. So I think that those are some of the most rewarding things, is the impact in clients and people that have lost weight, that they've reversed health conditions. I mean, I think that's the stuff. Again, it ties back to knowing that I was able to do something that helped someone get to a point that they weren't able to do on their own.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Amber, from your perspective, I think this is super valuable too, because we have some audience listening that maybe they're a couple, but one of either the husband or wife are going to take that leap of faith. Many times they're going to work together, but sometimes actually have a different career path. However, they're still lock and step. They're still on the same team. So from your perspective, watching and supporting Ben's growth would have been the biggest challenge, and also the biggest source of fulfillment.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I think about just the locations opening or the different events, I try to be there and lend a helping hand, right? So I don't go as the owner's wife. I go as the staff of FitBody, and
rolling up my sleeves. Let's go.
And dive in and see where I need to be, and help where I need to help. And so it's exciting to see the turnout to those things. Even some of the awards and event parties are pretty amazing. I would say just kind of back to like challenges and lessons learned. I think some of the hiring in the beginning was based on personal relationships, right? I really like you, so let's put you in this role. And, there were some, family members, call it, friends. And I think learning to look at, what are the characteristics that make a successful, leader, coach, etc., putting aside the personal relationship. I think a lot of people probably...
I've been guilty of that too, so I think it's part of the beast.
It's an easy pitfall because on one hand, these people you have a relationship with, there's trust, assumed trust there, right? Which you don't always have with a stranger. But there was a lot of emphasis and focus around like, how do we screen the right people? What are the questions? What are the digging that we do to really make sure that people are the right fit and are really going to embody the values that we expect at Fitbody.
All right, my friends, you've been so gracious and grateful, I guess, for your time. Or I'm grateful, I should say. We still have some time for the lightning round, if you guys are up for it.
Absolutely.
All right, so we talked about leadership and growth. Ben, I'm looking at you first, and then Amber, I want your opinion here. Personal growth and development is just part of who we are, and especially as fitness business owners and business owners in general. What are 2 or 3 things that you do, whether you've done in the past or consistently do, whether it's podcasts or events, and be more specific or be as specific as possible, that really has impacted your growth in a positive way? Ben, I want to hear from you first, and then Amber afterwards.
Probably the top 3 things are podcasts. There's several that I listen to on a regular basis. Books, I've got so many books. There's the read shelf and there's the to-read shelf. So there's a constant supply. Yeah. And I think just different like seminars and things, these masterminds and conferences and, even stuff outside of Fitbody that has been a huge thing. I just think, there's that whole saying, success leaves clues. And, it's just, just those are probably the top big 3 things for me.
Amber, how about you? And more specific, the better. If there's a certain podcast or a certain book that's really impacted, we'd love to hear.
And you could probably list off a couple of podcasts, but I'll speak to it, from a woman in leadership.
Yeah.
For those, women owners or soon-to-be owners, it's women, I think, in a lot of ways hold themselves back, and whether it's shame or guilt or maybe you're trying to balance home and kids. But I really like Brene Brown. She's got several books that I would recommend, and really just kind of talks about like really overcoming that, not being afraid to show who you are, to stand out. I think, especially a lot of my peers are men, and they're the ones that are going to be the first ones to ask for a raise and to ask for certain things where I'm like, I'll just rest on my laurels and do a great job. And it's, really kind of pushing myself out of my comfort zone and not, standing back in the shadows or waiting for something to come my way, but being really specific and direct about what I want, what I need. So that's one for all you ladies out there that I would recommend. She's got several books. And then what are the podcasts that you've been listening to recently? Craig Groeschel.
Yeah, the Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast.
Amazing.
Also, John Maxwell, his leadership podcast, and Ed Milet, his. Those are probably the top 3 that I listen to consistently. I know I've also got Tony Robbins, probably the Andy Frisella podcast. I just think that, especially with where I'm at, so many of the things are leadership items. So those are probably more leadership and mindset. That's probably where I spend the most of my time, and listening to those types of things that are going to help challenge me, grow, just get a little nugget of something that I can apply.
And I would also add to that is, we've tried to really be intentional about investing in our relationship and things, because there's high stress in both of our roles. So there's a great book called The DNA of Relationships, where, everyone's got their own personal triggers. And things that could be from something in your past that kind of shaped you into the person that you are. And so it's really like identifying those things. We've taken a marriage seminar. We just took one last year.
Family Life. They do them all over the country.
What was it called? It was called A Weekend to Remember.
Yeah.
So A Weekend to Remember.
A Weekend to Remember. So we attended it in Augusta, Georgia, but they're all over the U.S.
It was specifically for couples.
Yes,
specifically
it's just
for couples.
I've never heard of something like that, but that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's basically picture a conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's through Family Life. It's called Weekend to Remember. And yeah, basically it's a weekend seminar. You get a workbook. It's kind of like, a Fit Body conference,
Yeah.
except the entire thing is how to really, what does it take to have an amazing relationship? There's a lot of perceptions about marriage that are not true. And, if I'm going to sum it up, really it's that guys are kind of, selfish jerks. And we as leaders, really what it means to be a leader in your marriage is to be sacrificial and putting your wife and your family first. And, and I think there's this whole thing about, a few other books, Love and Respect, the 5 love languages. Those are some really probably big ones that have been, just in our
You
relationship
get healthy
as well.
homework, encourage date night. So it's a great
Yeah.
weekend without kids,
Yeah.
dogs, whatever you have going on, where you really just kind of disconnect and invest in each other. Because at the end of the day, you can be out there conquering the world, doing great things and being successful. But if your foundation at home isn't where it needs to be, does any of that really matter?
Yeah, you can't be 2 ships passing in the night, which can happen, especially with the stress and the anxiety of running businesses.
Very easy. It happens
Yeah.
very easily, yeah.
Yeah, and that's huge value, and really want to provide some talking points and some strategy for our audience who definitely will, encounter the same journey. So,
Absolutely.
Ben, this is more for you specifically, but from an owner lens, if you look back, what are 1 or 2 very common but easily avoidable mistakes for a new fitness business owner that maybe you made or you see and you're thinking to yourself, I shouldn't have done that? So that way our audience can kind of get a little bit more of a visibility on some common pitfalls.
The shiny object syndrome. That's, we go through some of the different personality tests. I'm definitely I'm like a dominant, what was it, the birds one?
Eagle.
It was like, something like 50 something percent eagle, then the other 40% parrot, and then there was like nothing for dove and like 5% owl. So basically what that, I don't know, and I've just discovered this. It's like I jump into too many things, and I've had to learn that like I need to say no more. And this has just been one of those things that I think really that's probably the biggest thing, is just staying more focused and not getting distracted by, I think, there's always opportunities. The thing that I've seen too is like there's always going to be opportunities and things that come up, but is really kind of staying focused on, what is that core thing instead of letting all the other distractions come up,
Sound advice. Last few questions here. From a fear perspective, because let's face it, when you're in them, this is more specifically for you, Ben, being the Amber, you joined the journey and a few locations in, but human nature, right? Like it's a big investment, you're putting your name on the line to, mark your territory in the community with a franchise. What were, some fears that you had going in, and, how did they play out?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest one for me, I have also come from, this is a whole other thing, but my childhood of having a scarcity mindset. I remember being like on food stamps as a kid, and that's a whole other story for a different time, but basically that's something I've had to overcome. And so that's always this whole thing. It's a huge investment. And this is one of the things I also got from the military is, you plan, you hope for the best, you plan for the worst, right? So if I just look at a worst case scenario, if I go bankrupt, how can I go bankrupt and still come out okay? And, there's a lot of different lessons with that, but just long story short is, there's a lot of stuff that you can not personally guarantee things, or maybe you put your house into a trust or LLC. So putting it so on paper, you don't own anything. And if you do go bankrupt, you're not going to lose everything. It might take a hit on your credit, a few $1,000s, but it's not going to ruin you financially. And I mean, I think that was kind of the big thing. That was what I was probably most afraid of. I mean, there's always that side of things as you grow. There's the ups and downs, the finances, that I think that's, if I look at probably what causes more stress, it's like when things are great, they're great. And then when, things are sucking, like that's just, it's a constant reminder, and it's just always there. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, good insight, which is just very common for human nature,
Yeah.
especially the size of the investment and the vision that a new entrepreneur has in any endeavor. So,
Yep.
All right, 2 last questions, and I want both your buy-in on this next one. Looking back, and we talked about what your goals were when basically launching and growing at scale, and we talked about some challenges and highlights. But what would you say is a highlight or a sense of fulfillment that you didn't expect, when launching a Fit Body Bootcamp? And for me, I'll use an example. Like I was really into fitness, and I wanted to give back to people. But then I realized, holy smokes, the community, the relationships, it just it has impacted my life in a very, very valuable way. Like like being friends with, you two here, Maine, our whole community has just been, so game changing for me and such a source of fulfillment. What would that be for you, Ben? And then I'm going to flip it over to Amber, just from looking, from the support system.
I mean, I would say that I can definitely echo that. I mean, that's a huge part, I think, an amazing part of this business. But even beyond that, there's, probably one story that I think was just, it really solidified why I'm doing this. And it wasn't something that I had ever really thought about. It was, we had a client that it was right when we were opening up the 4th location. And I remember she had come in and had 2 smaller girls. She was very overweight, maybe 5'3", 250 pounds or so. She probably needed to lose about, I think her goals were to lose about 80 pounds. And I just remember she was yelling at her kids when she walked in, and just remember, man, she's just seemed very angry. And
a ticking time bomb.
Yeah. And so anyway, she came into the program, she got started, lost a bunch of weight, and just got committed to, changing her life. And it was actually one of, it was Amber's cousin she does these, like annual Valentine's Day scavenger hunts. And this client was a mutual friend and was at this party.
We didn't know.
Yeah. And so she came up to me and we were talking. She's like, I don't think I told you, but when I had started FitBody, I had written down a date of when I was going to kill myself. And, I saw this ad for this boot camp and thought, you know what, like, just, she'd gone through some really challenging things in her life, just a lot of, just everything. Well, her life was basically falling apart. And, she thought, I'm going to go in and try this, and it literally saved her life. And she's like, I don't think I've told you, literally saved my life. And, that's something that, like, when you get into this, like, you see, like, okay, sure, we can help people maybe not have chronic disease, but that was one thing I never thought about. I was like, man, how many other people are out there that are on the edge? And it's like, we are literally like a life raft in the community, and I think it's like, how many of those people, and this is one of the things I try to use this story as a training point to our team, like, you don't know how many people that walk through that door have written down a day of when they're going to take their life, and you may be their last chance. And so, I don't know. I mean, I think for me, that's always probably one of the most unexpected things. And I think what drives me is like when things suck, it's like, man, when you look back in your life, like that's the type of impact I want to have,
Holy smokes, man. That's incredible. Amber, I don't know. You're going to
like,
back
I don't
that
really
one
think
up.
I can add anything to
yeah.
that. But it was very refreshing, because normally when we run into people at the grocery store, they're standing in front of their cart so we can't see what's in it. And
hiding their food and all that.
they're like, don't judge me. It's for my kids.
Right. I remember one time I was at a Costco, and one of my clients was just loading up, and he turns to me, he's like, Bryce, I'm just beefing up for the challenge, All right, my friends, last question. And this is really for, our audience who's interested in potentially becoming a FitBody owner or a gym owner and really launching a fitness business and really making a big impact on their community. But for whatever reason, they're scared, they're nervous, there's something holding them back, which again, just those fears are part of human nature. What would your advice be and why? And actually, Amber, I'm going to start with you and finish with Ben.
My advice would be to, make sure you've got a great support system in place. Also really, stay focused on not just the, because FitBody will give you, great process steps and things to follow and things to do. But it's very easy, like Ben mentioned, to get distracted. And when you get distracted, you lose the ability to be proactive. And so, really thinking about, no one could have predicted COVID, but there are multiple other things, right? Landlord challenges, building challenges, like things that can, pop up and get in the way. And really kind of think about, like, what is your plan, and how do you work through any of those potential things, right, that you can't prepare and plan for.
Love it. Great advice.
Absolutely.
What about you, Ben?
I think this is something that's always just stuck with me, is that I feel, here, let me rephrase this. So basically, if you're going to look back in your life, would you have rather have tried and failed or wondered what if? And, I just feel like so many people, they don't live up to their full potential because they live out of fear, a fear of what could go wrong. And, another podcast that I listened to a lot was by Tim Ferriss. He wrote the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And I remember this was a big thing. The example he would in there is like, okay, what's the thing we fear most? You map it out, and if it actually happens, you go bankrupt, you lose all your money, you lose your house, and you have to go back and get a job. I mean, yeah, that would suck, but is it going to destroy your life? And how often do we just focus on what could go wrong instead of what could go right? And I just think that that's probably been one of the biggest things. It's like a workout. You go in, those workouts that make you feel like you're going to throw up and you're so sore you can't hardly move for a week. It's the kind of same thing in life. What are you doing that makes you mentally feel like you're going to throw up? Because, the more you do it, the stronger you get, the better you get at it. And that very thing that made you feel like you're going to throw up a few years ago, you won't even think about it anymore. And I think that's probably the biggest thing for, any of the viewers is, and anyone listening to this, we have a finite time on this earth. And are you going to live out of fear and have regret at the end of your life? Or will you've taken that leap of faith and tried, even if you might have failed, you're going to get valuable lessons out of it. And what's going to be the legacy you leave? Is it going to be living out of fear or living out of faith?
It has to be living out of faith, Ben.
Absolutely.
Amber, that was awesome. That's a great way to end because that was a high note, and I appreciate you both. And before I do, want to give our audience the ability to connect with you if they have any questions or kind of want to follow your journey. So do you have either a website or a social media handle that our audience can connect with you at?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess for me, Instagram is it's by BY Ben Jones. And if anyone has any questions or, I can help or wanting to know what the process is, reach out and definitely be more than willing to give any tips or tricks, as you're getting started with this.
And tips and tricks, you have many, given your incredible success and long-standing career in the industry. So, friends, on that note, I just wanted to actually take the time to acknowledge you. It's awesome being here in Nashville, basically about to tee up our mastermind, continuing to learn and grow. I've been longtime friends with you both. Ben, we've been in the trenches for, nearly a decade now, and I have an incredible amount of respect for you and you as well, Amber, and just grateful to be on this journey together. So I want to acknowledge you and thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Bryce.
Thank you.
All right, friends, I know you got a ton of value. It's absolutely incredible. And as always, assuming that you did, give us a like and subscribe on YouTube and drop down your biggest takeaway in the comments. That way we can dialogue and continue to add value. And friends, that's all for today. We'll see you in the next episode.